In the spring of 1998, one man documented the real-time destruction of his own heart. Using private journals and raw poetry, he mapped his emotional collapse across 3 distinct shards: watched others, on stage, and changed hearts. The collapse begins with total isolation. After a lifetime of watching others play in love, he writes in his passionate Tiger journal that this is no game. He has to rely entirely on himself. But that isolation briefly gives way to a desperate, fleeting hope. Following a cast party for the musical Rent in Cincinnati, a brief connection with a Broadway actress creates a spark. Yet that spark quickly freezes into the anxiety of unreturned voicemails and a silent telephone. The free fall finally ends with one definitive act of closure. Refusing to be a victim, he leaves a moonstone ring and a personal mission statement on Lisa's windshield. He accepts the silence, taking away a permanent scar. Today, this archive serves as a perfectly preserved 1998 time capsule, proving that a shattered heart doesn't just heal in time, it leaves behind permanent, cataloged pieces that never truly disappear.
Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new Maximus Heart Podcast series.
Yes, welcome back.
I really want to say thank you so much for checking out all the previous streams on YouTube where we focus on all things spinning in the Maximus Heart universe by author Johnny Fontaine. I'm your co-host, Jamo.
And I'm your co-host, Gemma. I just want to jump in and give a massive shout out to our returning YouTube viewers who are along for the recent deep dives into all the short stories of Fontaine's wild embrace.
Oh, those were so fun to do.
They really were. And, you might be joining in from other Maximus Heart podcast series highlighting Fontaine's other works, such as Turn the Page and Eden Non Grata. And just as a quick reminder, all these books are available now on Amazon and Kindle.
Right, exactly. So, Gemma, today's episode 4 is focusing on the free verse confessional memoir called The Pieces, which is honestly unlike anything author Johnny Fontaine has written before.
Absolutely. This is a level of Johnny on these pages seen nowhere else. And Fontaine is writing under a pen name, isn't he?
Yes, Gemma, he is. Fontaine actually uses the pen name of Jamo for The Pieces, but no, Gemma, it's not me, though I'm honestly honored to share the same moniker with Fontaine.
I love that. It's such a great coincidence. But yeah, we definitely share a mutual love of Fontaine's writing. I mean, I've been reading and rereading some of The Pieces, and I am just mesmerized by the vulnerability.
It's pretty raw, right?
So raw. So I need to instruct you all right now. Check out the MaximusHeart.com website and the Pieces page now. And I'm just so thrilled to announce to the audience that author Johnny Fontaine will continue to curate additional stories and content with The Pieces moving forward. So for those who tracked or subscribed to our other YouTube series, you really don't want to miss it.
Wait, are you serious? That is incredible news.
I know, right?
The idea that Johnny Fontaine is going to be curating the entire experience. I mean, we're talking private YouTube feeds, Easter egg content, and even some author Q&A sessions. It's just amazing.
It's going to be huge.
Well, with all that coming, it's time to talk about The Pieces. So for today's episode 4, we will look into some perspective on the author, Jamo, and the background of The Pieces. We're also going to offer a look into the next 3 confessionals, or shards as Jamo refers to them, Changed Hearts, On Stage, and Watched Others.
Oh, I am so ready. It is time to dive deep into our breakdown of The Pieces. And, to really understand this deep dive, we have to start with the introduction.
Yeah, that section called Some Perspective.
Exactly. Because before you even get to the text, the visual architecture of this book just hits you. Yeah. The cover art is doing so much psychological heavy lifting.
It really is. I mean, it's a deeply arresting image. You're confronted with this red heart. But it's not like a clean Valentine's Day break down the middle.
No, not at all. It's shattered.
Right, completely shattered. We're talking violent, jagged cracks just splitting the core, and it's actually bleeding. There is physical blood spatter surrounding it on the canvas.
It totally strips away the whole romanticized, gentle sigh of a breakup. It presents it as what it actually feels like to your nervous system, of violent trauma.
Yeah, total trauma. And that visual maps so perfectly onto the terminology he uses, because he doesn't call these entries chapters, right, or even poems.
No, he calls them shards.
Shards, exactly. And when you think about a shard, it's dangerous. It's the debris from an explosion. If you handle a shard carelessly, it will literally slice your hand open.
Wow, yeah, that's such a great point. And in that introductory Some Perspective section, he describes the collection as these free verse Polaroids of a man in his mid-30s about to get his heart shattered into the pieces.
That Polaroid metaphor is so fascinating to me.
Right, because of how that specific technology actually works.
Exactly. A Polaroid isn't like a digital photo today where you can, take 80 versions and apply a filter.
Oh, and smooth out your skin, pick the best lighting.
Yeah. None of that.
Yeah.
A Polaroid is this Uncompromising, instantaneous chemical reaction. The shutter snaps, the paper spits out, and whatever messy, unedited reality existed in that exact millisecond is just permanently burned onto the film.
You can't curate it after the fact. It just is what it is.
But here is the really interesting contradiction in this deep dive. While the medium is instant, he tells us this project had to marinate until ready for over a quarter of a century.
25 years. It's wild.
Yeah, these are raw moments from 1998 placed in a dark drawer for 2.5 decades.
Which totally changes your relationship to the artifact, you know? Like when you look at a photo you took yesterday, you're looking at a reflection of your current self.
Right.
But when you look at a photo you took 25 years ago, you're essentially an archaeologist. You're examining a stranger who just happens to share your DNA.
You're studying a ghost. And if we wander through the museum of this introduction, the cast of characters he introduces us to, these ghosts he's studying, it's incredibly specific.
On the list of women, yes.
Yeah, he explicitly dedicates this to all the daughters of Eve, and he lists their names: Lisa, Amy, Julia, Jonte, Abby, Melissa, Angela, Jackie, Carolyn, and Anna.
But he doesn't just list them, he categorizes them for us, which is so interesting.
Right. He mentions a woman he met through a classified ad, a Broadway touring company actress, friends in recovery circles.
He even mentions a dog-walking neighbor who is 16 years older than him.
Yeah, and an emotionally confused lesbian. You read that list and it paints this highly specific, almost frantic psychological portrait of a man in his mid-30s.
It really does. It tells you exactly where his internal baseline was at that time. I mean, he is casting this unimaginably wide, desperate net.
Definitely. And think about the sheer friction of dating in 1998 compared to now.
Oh, it was a totally different world.
Right. Like, this isn't swiping right from your couch. Placing a classified ad meant you had to actually write out your plea, pay by the word, submit it to a physical newspaper, and wait.
Just waiting days or weeks for a physical letter or a call on a landline, it required so much deliberate effort.
Exactly. And looking in recovery circles, that suggests a profound yearning for shared vulnerability, you know? Like finding someone who is also admittedly broken.
And reaching for a Broadway actress is just this glittering, unreachable fantasy. He's grasping at every conceivable archetype of love, basically hoping just one of them will act as a tourniquet.
A tourniquet for this massive internal hemorrhaging. That's exactly it.
And that desperation really informs the unique dual structure of these creative archaeological digs, because every single free verse poem, the verse libre, is anchored directly to a raw, unedited journal entry from 1998.
Right, the artist forced to sit right next to the blunt reality.
But Jamo, I've been turning this over in my head and I really want to get your read on it. Do you think the poetry is actually serving as a defensive shield here?
A shield? How do you mean?
Well, think about it. When we're in pain, we often try to make it sound noble or tragic, right? Just to avoid how pathetic it actually feels in the moment.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like, does the beautiful free verse act as a mask, while the journal is the only place we see the actual unvarnished truth?
I see where you're going with the shield idea, Gemma, but I actually have to disagree.
Really? Why?
I don't think the poetry is a shield at all. I think the poetry is the architectural blueprint of how he wished the house was built, and the journal is the pile of collapsed rubble on the ground.
Oh, wow. The blueprint and the rubble. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because by publishing them side by side, he is deliberately stripping away his own armor. If he just published the poetry, we'd all say, oh, what a beautifully tragic artist.
We totally would. It would be very romanticized.
Exactly. But by forcing us to read the frantic journal entry underneath it, he's willingly showing us the embarrassing, chaotic, messy reality that birthed the poem.
He does explicitly call this open heart surgery without the benefit of anesthesia.
Right. You don't use anesthesia, you feel the blade.
That's a really compelling way to frame it. The juxtaposition is the actual vulnerability. And yet, even in the middle of this unanesthetized surgery, he uses humor to regulate the tension.
He really does. The humor is so unexpected but necessary.
The way he pairs things in the some perspective section is bizarre but so deliberate. Like, he talks about how love and poetry belong together, like Lennon and McCartney, which is this classic beautiful synergy.
A perfect match.
But then he immediately pivots to comparing them to Buckethead in his guitar, or Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Yeah, or a New York black and white cookie and a glass of cold milk. It's brilliant nervous system regulation for the reader.
It really is. It gives you a second to breathe.
Right, because when you are guiding someone into a deep, dark, emotional cave, you have to occasionally crack a joke so they remember there's still oxygen in the room.
That's so true. And shows like Breaking Bad are about absolute moral decay and destruction, yet the pairing is perfect.
He's signaling to you like, yes, we're going to walk through the absolute wreckage of my psyche, but I haven't lost my sense of irony. You are safe with me.
Which establishes profound trust. And honestly, that is exactly what you need as a reader before stepping into the first major shard of our deep dive, Changed Hearts.
Oh man, Changed Hearts.
Yeah, because the moment we transition into this piece, the humor just evaporates.
Yeah.
We are plunged directly into this suffocating echo chamber of a fresh breakup.
This shard perfectly illustrates that tension between the blueprint and the rubble we were just talking about. Let's look at the poem Changed Hearts first.
It is steeped in this grand theatrical resignation.
It really is. He writes, let me find it. Mercy hears nothing but the silence between us. You asked for space, and now you have eternity without me.
Gives you chills, doesn't it?
It does. And it builds to this crescendo. Mercy hears nothing but the words last spoken, which are left in the air, floating upward for the angels to catch and deliver to us in our memories.
It's beautiful. It frames the loss as this cosmic event. The idea that angels are catching their final words implies that this relationship was so significant that the heavens themselves are pausing to document its tragic end.
It's a way of infusing agonizing pain with deep spiritual meaning.
But then you slide your eyes down the page to the journal entry from March 12, 1998.
And the reality check is just brutal. The journal entry reads, simply, "Cold Lisa. She sounded so cold, uncaring."
That is the entirety of the reality.
Yeah. There are no angels. There is no cosmic significance. There is just a guy in his 30s dialing his ex-girlfriend's number, hoping for a sliver of warmth, and hitting an absolute wall of ice.
It's the blunt force trauma of rejection. And, let's explore what is actually happening in the human brain during a moment like that.
Oh, I love the psychological angle here.
Right. So when he hears Lisa sounding cold and uncaring, his brain isn't just processing sadness. Neuroscience tells us that social rejection activates the anterior cingulate cortex.
Wait, isn't that the same part of the brain that processes physical pain?
Yes. The exact same neural pathways. So he is quite literally in physical agony in that moment, and his brain has to instantly deploy an extreme defense mechanism just to survive the shock.
Which explains the massive philosophical pivot he makes later in that exact same journal entry.
Yes. The pivot is jarring and fascinating.
Right after documenting her coldness, he writes, "No one knows who I am. There's minor security in that. Time to direct. Why not be the God within? Since God isn't here in person, he has left me in charge of me."
Let's unpack the mechanics of that thought process. Why does a man who just got completely frozen out on a phone call suddenly declare himself a deity?
It's intense, right? It really comes down to the psychology of extreme powerlessness.
Exactly. When you reach out to the person you love and they give you absolutely nothing, you realize you have zero control over the external world. You cannot make her love you.
You cannot make her warm.
Right. So faced with that terrifying impotence, the ego retreats inward and builds a fortress. If he has no power over Lisa, he will simply declare himself the supreme, untouchable ruler of his internal universe.
It's a narcotic illusion of control. He is building a kingdom of one, because a kingdom of one cannot be invaded.
That is such a profound way to look at it.
But notice the foundation he builds this kingdom on: anonymity. He says, no one knows who I am. There is a minor security in that. He is finding safety in isolation. If you don't know me, you can't hurt me.
And how incredible is the through line from that 1998 journal entry to the reality of us reading this book today?
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Right. He wrote that he found security in no one knowing who he was, and now, 25 years later, he is publishing this incredibly raw, bleeding memoir under the pen name Jamo. He is still utilizing that barrier.
He totally is. He is handing you his exposed, beating heart, but he's standing behind a pane of frosted glass to do it.
It's a brilliant meta layer to the entire project.
It really is. And speaking of meta layers, that brings us right into the absolute surrealism of the next shard on stage.
Oh, on stage. This is where things get wild.
Yeah, because if Changed Hearts was the immediate shock of the breakup, on stage is the frantic, almost hallucinatory illusion of the rebound. And it contains an Easter egg that practically broke my brain.
It is genuinely one of the most surreal things we've ever encountered while doing this deep dive. Let's set the stage.
Okay, set it.
It's March 18th, 1998. He is still reeling from Lisa. It's only been a week since he declared himself the god within, and then he gets a phone call.
And he writes in the journal, let me read this. And I died today. Called Lisa last night. She was drunk, telling me she was alone, but moving on. All these people from the past calling.
And then the kicker.
Yes, the kicker. He writes about her telling him how ugly Johnny Fontaine is as a name, how I wasn't thinking about a wife and child and doing the name change.
Gemma, I actually had to put the book down and walk around my room when I read that.
Right. We are sitting here hosting a deep dive into the Maximus Heart universe, analyzing the brilliant literary career of an author named Johnny Fontaine.
And right here, buried in a 1998 diary, we are reading the real-time origin story of that exact pen name being viciously mocked by a drunk ex-girlfriend.
She literally calls the name Johnny Fontaine ugly. It's like finding a prophecy written on a bar napkin.
It really is. But if we look past the surreal coincidence for us as readers, think about the psychological warfare happening in that phone call.
Oh, it's brutal.
He is a man drowning in grief. He is trying to build a life raft by reinventing himself, adopting a new creative identity, Johnny Fontaine, just to write his way out of the pain.
And the person who threw him in the water to begin with calls him up just to tell him his life raft is ugly.
Wow. Yes. It is a profound attack on his core attempt at survival.
And his reaction to that attack is explosive.
Yeah.
He doesn't retreat this time. He writes in massive capital letters, practically screaming off the page, I am in the middle of a major change in my life, and I am not going to be a victim.
A total manifesto.
Yeah, he goes on, my life, my choice, my future, fame and fortune, my heart, mind and soul, my dreams.
He is violently rejecting her narrative of him. She's trying to drag him back down, and he is trying to achieve escape velocity.
Escape velocity, I like that. But here's the insidious thing about that kind of white-knuckle defiance. It requires a catastrophic amount of energetic fuel to maintain.
Oh, absolutely. You burn out so fast.
Exactly. You can only scream that you aren't a victim into the void for so long before you collapse from exhaustion.
Yeah.
Which explains exactly why, just 1 week later on March 25th, he completely shatters and desperately seeks a distraction.
He needs an escape hatch, and he finds it in the theater. He goes to Cincinnati for the opening night of the touring company of the musical Rent.
And we really need to talk about why Rent is such a crucial detail here.
Let's do it.
This isn't a light, fluffy comedy. Rent is a musical fundamentally obsessed with starving artists, bohemians desperate for connection, living in the shadow of disease and death.
It is an absolute emotional pressure cooker.
It really is.
Yeah.
He watches this show, writes that it is fantastic, moving, and inspiring, and then he goes to the cast party. And that is where he meets Julia, the actress playing Mimi.
And this is where we witness the terrifying speed of limerence.
Let's define limerence for the audience because it's so important here.
Right, so limerence isn't just a crush. It is an involuntary, obsessive cognitive state where you basically project all of your hopes for salvation onto another person.
Which is exactly what happens with Julia. Let's trace the timeline of his escalation with her because it is staggering.
It really is. So he introduces himself, he asks for her autograph. That's normal enough. But then a coworker named Georgia speaks to Julia and reports back to him that Julia seemed disappointed he only wanted an autograph.
That one word, disappointed, is the spark hitting the gasoline.
Absolutely.
In his wounded, desperate state, he interprets her disappointment as a signal of availability, and he spirals into pure manic action.
He sends Georgia back to get Julia's phone number.
Yes. He calls Julia's hotel room and leaves a voicemail at 3:30 in the morning. He calls back the very next day at 1 in the afternoon and leaves another voicemail.
He even writes her a letter apologizing if he invaded her space. Jamo, all of this happens in less than 24 hours.
It is deeply uncomfortable to read, precisely because it is so universally recognizable. We see the frantic, pulsing desperation.
We really do. But we have to understand why his brain is doing this. He doesn't know Julia. He doesn't love Julia.
Right, look at how he describes her in the journal. He says she's 26 or 27, gorgeous, 5'4", Hispanic, a New York girl.
He's listing statistics off a baseball card.
Exactly. He's not attaching to her soul. He is desperately trying to engineer a massive dopamine spike. He is trying to overwrite the agonizing reality of Lisa with the glittering, untouchable fantasy of a Broadway actress.
It's the ultimate defense mechanism. If you fixate on a mirage in the distance, you don't have to look at the quicksand you're currently sinking into.
Wow, that's incredibly true. And the poem that accompanies this section, On Stage, actually shows a stunning moment of self-awareness about this exact dynamic.
It does. The journal is a frantic blur of voicemails and letters, but the poem just distills the truth.
But the final lines read, She is on stage, not returning my calls, not real.
Not real. That is the most important phrase in this entire section.
Because he knows, right, subconsciously.
Yes. He knows that the impossibility of Julia is exactly what makes her appealing. In the poem, he admits he is seeking joy through music, drama, and the fear of looking into another set of eyes.
Because of Lisa, real intimacy is currently a lethal threat to him.
Exactly, so he chooses an object of affection, a woman literally elevated on a stage, separated by a proscenium arch geographically transient because she is fundamentally unavailable.
It is a safe place to put his chaotic energy because it requires zero actual vulnerability.
But the tragedy of the rebound is that the high never lasts.
Never. And we see that whiplash perfectly illustrated on April 1st, ironically April Fool's Day.
Oh, the irony is thick.
Julia actually calls him back. It's a lovely interaction. She thanks him for the flowers. She tells him she loved his outgoing voicemail message. She says it was nice to meet him.
On paper, the external world just gave him exactly what he was frantically chasing. He got the validation from the star.
And yet it fixes absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
The validation acts like a momentary painkiller that wears off almost instantly. Immediately after documenting her call, the abyss opens back up underneath him.
He writes, "Will Julia call? Where am I? I feel so lost, alone, unloved. Right now, I just want to connect with her, to remind me of who I am and who I'm not. I don't want the echoes of silence, tears into sleep."
It's devastating. To remind me of who I am. He is outsourcing his entire identity and emotional regulation to a stranger who just happens to be passing through town.
He is bleeding out internally, and he's trying to stop the bleeding by having a Broadway actress sign the cast.
It fundamentally cannot work. And that profound failure brings us to the emotional bedrock of this entire book, the shard called Watched Others.
This is the heavy one.
Because what we discover here is that the wound Lisa inflicted is actually just a reopening of a much older, deeper scar.
Exactly. By mid-April of 1998, the adrenaline of the chase with Julia has completely evaporated. The cast party is a distant memory.
The reality of Lisa's back, and it's heavier than ever.
He writes on April 15th, "Struggling continues. I feel nothing, or perhaps the deepest sadness I've ever known."
And in that state of deep sadness, he attempts one final cinematic grand gesture to rewrite the ending of his relationship with Lisa.
It is such a specific, visceral moment. Tell them what he does.
He dates a moonstone ring, a ring he had given Lisa 2 months prior, wraps it inside a multi-page document he calls his mission statement, and leaves it on the windshield of her car in the middle of the night.
It is a massive, dramatic escalation.
Huge. And what is the catalyst that pushes him to do this? He notes in his journal that he'd just seen the movie Good Will Hunting.
The cultural context of 1998 is so crucial here. Over a span of just a few weeks, his journals mention watching Rent, The Big Lebowski, and Good Will Hunting.
These pieces of media were actively shaping the language he used to process his own life.
Let's look at Good Will Hunting. It's a film entirely about a man with profound, unhealed childhood trauma who actively destroys his romantic relationships because he feels fundamentally unworthy of love.
Right. And how is he cured in the movie?
A therapist breaks through his defenses in a highly dramatic scene, repeating, "It's not your fault," until the protagonist collapses, weeping.
Yes. So our author sits in a dark theater, watches that cinematic emotional breakthrough, feels completely gutted or inspired by it, and immediately drives into the night to leave a ring and a manifesto on his ex's car.
He is literally trying to force a third-act cinematic climax in his real life.
He wants the swelling string section, the pouring rain, the dramatic realization from Lisa that they belong together.
He writes in all capital letters, "What's happening to me? I miss her so freaking much, and it hurts."
You can see the agonizing disconnect between his sophisticated, highly produced grand gesture and the primal, unvarnished scream of a child just wanting the pain to stop.
But life isn't a movie. There is no swelling soundtrack.
There is just the crushing, blunt reality of April 29th. The entry is incredibly brief, and it rings with absolute finality.
He writes, "Talked to Lisa the other night. It's over. This I know."
The curtain drops. The grand gesture failed. The magic didn't work. But the true revelation, the masterstroke of this entire confessional, isn't found in the journal entries about Lisa's rejection.
It's found in the poem that accompanies them, Watched Others.
Yes, because this poem provides the psychological skeleton key that unlocks everything we've talked about today in this deep dive.
The manic obsession with the actress, the feeling of powerlessness, the grand gestures, it all traces back to the middle stanzas of this poem.
It completely recontextualizes everything we just discussed.
But Helmy, you have those lines in front of you.
I do, and they are breathtaking in their clarity. He writes, "Since I was a child, I played in the space of being alone and watched others playing in a space of being in love."
Stop right there. Since I was a child.
That is the aha moment.
It really is. The Heartbreak with Lisa in 1998 isn't just about Lisa. Lisa is merely the catalyst that ripped the scab off a foundational childhood wound.
He has spent his entire life as an observer of love, never a secure participant. He learned early on to play in the space of being alone.
Think about how perfectly that explains his obsession with Julia, the Broadway actress.
Oh man, you're right.
He literally bought a ticket, sat in a darkened theater, and watched a woman act out passion and love on a brightly lit stage.
It is the ultimate literal manifestation of his entire psychological existence, watching others play in the space of love while he sits alone in the dark.
It is staggeringly profound, and the tragic beauty of this poem is that he finally realizes he can no longer survive as a spectator.
The rejection from Lisa forces him out of the audience and onto the stage of his own actual life, but he realizes how terrifyingly vulnerable he is out there.
The poem ends with these lines, "Now I'm not playing anymore. This is my life, not a game. My heart, not a toy, is something God made just once."
Compare that to the man we saw just a few weeks earlier in the Changed Heart section.
Night and day.
Back in early March, he was puffing his chest out, declaring himself the God within, building an impenetrable fortress of anonymity, pretending he was untouchable.
And now, at the end of April, the fortress is entirely gone. He realizes he isn't a god.
He is a mortal man, holding a single fragile heart that was made exactly once, and it has been shattered. The journey of these pieces is the journey from the illusion of invulnerability to the terrifying acceptance of our own fragility.
And that acceptance is the only way true healing ever begins. You cannot fix a shattered heart while pretending you're a god who doesn't feel pain.
You have to look at the blood on the canvas.
The psychological depth of this author, his willingness to document his own absolute unraveling, his frantic attempts at rebound, and his eventual painful reassembly. It elevates the pieces so far beyond a standard breakup memoir.
It is a forensic examination of the human condition. It reminds us that most of us are just walking around carrying the unhealed wounds of our inner children, desperately hoping someone will come along and bandage them for us.
And when someone comes along and rips the bandage off instead, we are forced to become our own curators. We are forced to look at the Polaroids of our past, no matter how much they hurt to see.
Wow, yes.
This confessional memoir is another example of why Fontaine's writing keeps delivering no matter what time of night I call. It's unflinching, it's necessary, and it's brilliant. And sadly, Jamo, that wraps up today's breakdown. I want to say a massive thank you to all the loyal audience who have tracked, watched, and subscribed so far. Going on this journey with you is a privilege.
It truly is. And listen to me carefully. You need to urge yourselves to go and grab your copy of The Pieces by the author on Amazon or Kindle right now. Because not only do you get this incredible memoir, but inside, you get an exclusive sneak peek into Glorious Ruins, a memoir in parts.
You really do not want to miss that.
Glorious Ruins is a deeper memoir project by John Jamo, and let me pronounce that carefully for you. Jamo, or as you know him, Jamo. That project is eyeing the end of this year for its first volume launch. So make sure you go to the MaximusHeart.com website for more on The Pieces and Glorious Ruins, and please subscribe now to secure all of the Maximus Heart Podcast series archive materials.
I definitely want to invite everyone to come back for more on this and other series within the Maximus Heart YouTube channel. But before you go, consider this. If leaving pieces of our hearts with other people is the price of living fully, as Jamo suggests in his dedication to the Daughters of Eve, what does the whole heart look like when all those pieces are finally gathered back together 25 years later? Can you ever truly get those pieces back perfectly, or do you just learn to build a beautiful new life in the negative space they left behind? Something to mull over until next time.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are taking a visceral, retro print journey straight back into the late 90s. We're looking at a stunningly personal work called The Pieces by author Jamo. Now, this isn't your standard run-of-the-mill memoir. Instead, it's a brilliant, raw pairing of poetry and unedited journal entries from 1998. It acts as an absolute roller coaster of an emotional time capsule, capturing a mid-30s man navigating total romantic devastation. What we're doing today is creating a stunning and structured retro print comprehensive overview that connects the dots within the source material, specifically exploring the chapters Changed Hearts, On Stage, and Watched Others. Okay, Let's dive into this, because this single brutal quote perfectly defines the entire emotional landscape of the book. Jamo describes the experience of revisiting these memories as open heart surgery without the benefit of anesthesia. I mean, that hooks you immediately, right? Because it sets a very clear expectation. What we're about to explore is absolutely not sanitized. It is a stunning, completely unfiltered look at pain. And you know that lack of anesthesia is perfectly anchored by the imagery of a violently shattered, bleeding heart. It establishes this very specific, metallic, gritty late 90s zine aesthetic. It's messy, it's visceral, and it perfectly represents the harsh reality of a man getting his heart just completely shattered into fragments, which the author literally categorizes as the shards. Part 1. The Archaeology of Heartbreak, Excavating 1998. So to understand how this excavation actually works, we have to look at the book's core mechanical structure, verse libre. Jamo takes his free verse poetry and places it right side by side with raw, unedited journal entries from the exact same dates back in 1998. Essentially, he curates his own scars by juxtaposing this polished, sweeping art with the often ugly, messy, and desperate reality of his daily diary. It's like a dual narrative, acting as a creative archaeological dig. And who is the catalyst for all of this? Well, the introduction gives us a really striking list of women who broke his heart, acting as mirrors for his internal state. We've got a Broadway touring company actress, a dog-walking neighbor 16 years his senior, an emotionally confused lesbian, and various friends in recovery. They all leave him with different pieces. And to really get a comprehensive overview of how this all breaks down, we're going to focus on 3 distinct chapters in his timeline. Part 2. Changed Hearts, The Fracture, March 11th and 12th. Now, what's really interesting is the stark contrast presented as we look at the initial fracture with a woman named Lisa. In his poetry, we get this romantic, sweeping language. Mercy hears nothing but the silence between us. But then, you look at his journal entry from March 12th, and it reveals a reality that is way less poetic. He writes, "Called Lisa. She sounded so cold, uncaring." It just completely shatters that romantic illusion, showing us the harsh, mundane reality of being rejected over a simple phone call. But even in that cold rejection, his mind immediately rushes to elevate the pain. He writes of their last spoken words, floating upward for the angels to catch and deliver to us in our memories. Just sit with that for a second. It's such a heavy emotional beat, and it shows exactly how desperately he wants to find some profound meaning in someone simply walking away. So the crucial point is how he reacts to this fracture. In his journal, Jamo pivots from the pain of Lisa's rejection toward a really desperate need to seize control of his life. He writes, "Since God isn't here in person, he has left me in charge of me." It's a fascinating psychological pivot, right? Moving from total abandonment to this sudden, fierce independence. Part 3. On Stage, A Spark, March 18th to the 25th. That fierce independence very quickly turns frantic as we move into the rebound phase. On March 18th, he gets a drunk call from Lisa where she casually insults him and talks about moving on. His journal entry literally explodes in all caps. "I am in the middle of a major change in my life and I am not going to be a victim." It is just a raw defense mechanism in action. He is so determined to force a new successful future into existence. And he tries to force that future exactly 1 week later. On March 25th, he travels to Cincinnati for the opening night of the musical Rent. He ends up going to the cast party and meets Julia, the gorgeous actress playing Mimi. He feels this immediate connection, asking for her autograph and feeling sparks fly in this incredibly serendipitous, highly charged late 90s cultural moment. It's this massive manic high that acts as the perfect antidote to Lisa. And this brilliantly illustrates how quickly the fantasy of the rebound clashes with reality. The poem captures the butterflies perfectly. Do I ask her for her autograph? But the journal totally grounds us again. He's leaving messages at 3:30 in the morning and then again at 1 p.m. the next day, and he gets nothing. He realizes she is on stage, not returning my calls, not real. The fantasy actress on tour was, well, just that, a fantasy. Part 4. Watched Others, The Void, March 31st through April 29th. This is where the manic high of the rebound completely crashes into a stark, empty void. You can track this super rapid degradation of his hope. On March 31st, he's desperately booking another Rent ticket. On April 1st, he actually gets a hopeful voicemail from Julia saying she loved the flowers he sent. But then the momentum just dies. By April 15th, he's right back to agonizing over Lisa, even leaving a moonstone ring on her car. And finally, by April 29th, after talking to Lisa one last time, he accepts that it's over. The spark is gone. He's officially hit rock bottom. It's such an agonizing, distinctly analog feeling of 1998. He doesn't just send a text, no, he goes to see the movie Good Will Hunting, wraps a moonstone ring in his personal mission statement, and physically leaves it on Lisa's car. Contrasted against that grand, cinematic gesture is his raw, caps lock journal breakdown. What's happening to me? I miss her so fucking much and it hurts. It strips away all the beautiful poetry. It's just pure, bleeding grief. But, out of that total breakdown comes this really grounded, profound realization. He writes in his poetry, "This reality of being alone means I have a choice. There is no one to turn to except myself." He is no longer fighting the void. He's finally accepting the solitude, and he's taking real ownership of his healing instead of just looking for a quick fix in a Broadway actress. And he follows it with this line, "My heart, not a toy, is something God made just once." It's incredibly heavy. It's the ultimate realization of self-worth after months of offering his heart up to be trampled on. Part 5. Curating your own scars, the healing process. Let's see how this all builds, because this isn't just about a guy who had a bad spring back in 1998. It's about the universal process of curating our own history. Think back to those shattered fragments. Jamo's journey through changed hearts, on stage and watched others, is essentially a survival guide. It shows us what it actually looks like to survive heartbreak without anesthesia, to collect all those pieces, and to meticulously put them back together through art and reflection over decades. As the author notes in his preface, some of the scars will be found on these pages. Some you'll never see, nor know if they've healed. This brilliantly highlights that healing is an ongoing, often entirely private process. We curate the memories we can actually bear to look at, and we keep the rest locked away for good. Which leaves us with this final thought. Seeing how meticulously one man documented and reflected on his own emotional wreckage a quarter of a century later, it forces us to look inward. So what pieces of your own past, what old journals or scattered memories are still waiting to be excavated and curated by you? Take a look back. You might just find some poetry hidden in the pain.